Blood stained the man's white shirt as he stumbled through the narrow market alley, one hand pressed against his side, the other reaching for doors that slammed shut before he could speak. Behind him, motorcycles roared. Men shouted his name like hunters closing in on wounded prey. "Help me," he gasped. But no one moved. Traders hid behind wooden stalls. Mothers pulled their children away. Fear ruled the street until Ogechi Nwosu, a poor delivery girl with a giant woven basket strapped to her bicycle, stepped into his path. She looked at the men coming closer, then opened the basket. Before the sun rose over the crowded roofs of Ajagunle, Ogechi Nwosu was already awake. She sat quietly on the edge of her thin mattress, her eyes fixed on the only thing that mattered before anything else, her mother's breathing. Mama Ifeoma lay near the window, her body wrapped in a faded cloth. The sickness had taken weight from her bones and strength from her voice, but not from her eyes. Even in sleep, her chest rose unevenly, as if every breath had to fight its way through something heavy and unseen. Ogechi leaned forward, listening, one breath, then another. Only then did she whisper softly, "Thank you, God." The room they lived in was small enough that every movement felt shared. One bed for her mother, a mat near the door for her younger brother, Chidi, a single wooden shelf that held everything important, medicine bottles, nearly empty a small photo of their father, and a worn-out notebook where Ogechi tracked her deliveries. Chidi was 12, but life had made him older than his years. He slept curled tightly, his school uniform folded beside him, like something precious. "Chidi," Ogechi whispered gently. "Wake up." He groaned. 5 minutes. You said that yesterday. Today is different." "It is not." He opened one eye, then quickly sat up when he saw the seriousness in her face. Okay. I am awake." Outside, the compound was beginning to come alive. Buckets scraping the ground, voices arguing over water, a baby crying somewhere down the corridor. Life never waited for anyone in Lagos. Ogechi moved quickly. She warmed leftover pap from the night before, adding more water to stretch it. There wasn't enough, but there was never enough. She gave most of it to Chidi and their mother. "And you?" Mama Ifeoma asked, watching her closely. "I will eat later," Ogechi replied without hesitation. Her mother held her gaze a second longer than usual, then sighed. "You think I don't know when my daughter is lying?" Ogechi smiled faintly. "You know too much, Mama. Drink your medicine." She crushed a tablet and helped her mother sit up. The cough came suddenly, shaking Mama Ifeoma's thin frame. Chidi froze beside them, worry clear on his face. "It's okay," Ogechi said quickly, supporting her mother's back. "It will pass." But even as she said it, fear tightened in her chest. The medicine was almost finished. She didn't say it aloud. Some truths were too heavy for mourning. By the time the sky began to brighten, Ogechi had tied her scarf, lifted her delivery bag, and secured the large woven basket to the back of her old bicycle. The basket was patched in several places, held together with wire and stubbornness, just like her life. Chidi walked beside her toward the road. "Sister," he said quietly, "my teacher said we need to pay for exam booklets by Friday. How much? 3,000 naira. Ogechi nodded slowly, though her hands tightened slightly on the bicycle handle. "I will find it." Chidi looked at her. "You always say that." "And I always do." He smiled a little. "You fight invisible battles, then pray I win again." At the junction, she watched him disappear into a group of school children before turning toward the city. Lagos did not ease into the day. It exploded into it. Buses roared past her. Conductors shouted destinations at the top of their lungs. Street vendors weaved between vehicles, balancing trays of food and goods on their heads. The air smelled of dust-frying oil sweat and endless movement. Ogechi rode through it all, her body already tired before the day had truly begun. Her first delivery took her to a wealthy neighborhood. Tall gates, clean roads, silence that felt expensive. A security guard looked her over before allowing her in. "Delivery," she said. He nodded, still watching her like she did not belong. The woman who received the package barely glanced at her. "You are late," she said sharply. "There was traffic, Ma." "Do I look like traffic is my concern?" "No, Ma." The woman took the parcel, inspecting it like it might have been contaminated by Ogechi's touch. "You people should learn to do your work properly." Ogechi lowered her eyes. "Yes, Ma." She had heard worse. On her way out, she exhaled slowly as if releasing the words before they could settle inside her. By mid-morning, she reached Balogun Market. Here life was loud, chaotic, and real. Traders shouted prices, customers argued, children ran between stalls. Everyone was hustling, pushing, surviving. Ogechi moved carefully, collecting packages and balancing them in her basket. "Ogechi," a voice called. She turned. It was Mama Sade, a food seller with a sharp tongue and a hidden kindness. "Come and carry these orders before my customers start insulting me," Mama Sade said. "I'm coming." As Ogechi packed the food containers, Mama Sade glanced at her. "You are getting thinner." "I am fine." "You are not fine. Even your shadow is tired." Ogechi smiled faintly. Mama Sade scooped a small portion of rice into a nylon bag and pushed it toward her. "Take." "I can't take," the older woman insisted. "Don't argue." Ogechi accepted it softly. "Thank you." Just as she secured the last container into her basket, someone bumped into her from behind. The basket tilted. One of the food packs slipped out and fell to the ground, bursting open in the mud. For a moment, everything seemed to pause. Then the customer, a well-dressed man, turned sharply. "What is this?" he snapped. "I'm sorry, sir." "Someone pushed. I paid for that food. I will replace it with what money," he cut in, his voice rising. "Look at you." People began to watch. Ogechi felt heat rise to her face, but she stayed calm. "Please, sir, I will fix it," he scoffed. "You poor girls are always careless?" The words landed, but she did not react. Instead, she reached into her small pouch and pulled out money, meant for something else. Mama Sade stepped closer. "Leave it. It was an accident." But Ogechi shook her head and placed the money down. "I'm sorry," she said. The man took the replacement food and walked away, satisfied not just by repayment, but by humiliation. Ogechi bent to clean the mess. That was when she noticed the old woman. She sat near the gutter, barely noticed by anyone. Her clothes were worn. Her hands trembled as she reached weakly toward scraps near the ground. People walked past her like she didn't exist. Ogechi looked at the food Mama Sade had given her. Her stomach tightened. She had not eaten. But the old woman looked like she hadn't eaten in days. Without thinking further, Ogechi walked over and knelt. "Mama," she said gently, "please take this." The old woman looked up slowly. "For me?" "Yes." "You have eaten." Ogechi smiled. "I will eat later." The woman accepted the food with shaking hands. "What is your name, Ogechi?" "Ogechi," she repeated softly. "May your kindness find you again." Behind them, a few traders laughed. "She is feeding strangers when she cannot feed herself," one said. "That is why she will remain poor," another added. Ogechi heard them, but she stood up quietly and walked away. She had learned something important in life. Not every voice deserved to live in her heart. The rest of the day passed in exhaustion. More deliveries, more waiting, more small insults that stacked like invisible weight on her shoulders. By evening, her legs ached and her stomach burned with hunger. When she finally returned home, Chidi was sitting outside doing his homework. "You're late," he said. The city was not kind today. He looked at her closely. "Did you eat?" Ogechi raised an eyebrow. "Why is everyone asking me that?" "Because your face looks like you didn't." "My face always looks like this." "That is not encouraging." She laughed softly. Inside, Mama Ifeoma watched her enter. "You are tired," her mother said. "I am alive." Ogechi replied. That was her answer to everything. After dinner, thin rice stretched too far. Ogechi counted the money she had earned. It was not enough. Not for rent, not for medicine, not for Chidi's school, not for tomorrow. She sat beside her large woven basket, running her fingers over its rough edges. To others, it was just a poor girl's tool. To her, it was survival. She did not know that very soon that same basket would carry something far more dangerous than food. She did not know her life was already changing. She only knew one thing. Tomorrow she would wake again before the sun, and she would keep going, because stopping was not an option. By the next morning, Lagos was already loud before the sun fully rose, but something in the air felt different. Ogechi did not notice it at first. She woke the same way she always did, listening for her mother's breath, whispering a quiet prayer, stretching what little food remained. Chidi rushed off to school with the same hopeful smile, and Mama Ifeoma took her medicine with the same silent strength. Everything looked the same, but outside the city was holding its breath for something. Ogechi felt it only when she reached Balogan Market. There was a strange tension beneath the usual chaos. Traders were louder than normal. People whispered in tight circles. A group of men stood at one corner, not buying, not selling, just watching everything. Ogechi slowed her bicycle slightly. Something wasn't right. Still work did not wait for fear. She collected her first delivery, a package of electronics, and secured it into her basket. Her movements were steady, but her eyes moved more than usual, scanning faces, reading the mood. "Have you heard a woman nearby?" whispered to another trader. "He escaped," the second replied. "They said he stole billions. They said he killed someone. No, they said he ran from police." The rumors shifted like wind. Ogechi frowned slightly. In Lagos, rumors traveled faster than buses and were often just as dangerous. She shook it off and continued riding deeper into the market. That was when she heard it. A shout, then another, then running footsteps. Not the normal rushing of customers, but something sharper, more urgent. People began to move, not forward, but away. Ogechi stopped. From the far end of the narrow market path, a man stumbled into view. He looked like he had been running for a long time. His shirt, once white, was stained with dust and something darker, blood. His face carried panic, not pride. His eyes were searching not for escape, but for help. "Please," he gasped, his voice breaking. "Help me." He reached toward a woman selling peppers. She stepped back immediately. "I don't know you," she said loudly, raising both hands as if danger itself could be caught. He turned to another man. "Please, they are coming." The man avoided his eyes. Around them, people began pulling their goods closer, stepping back, disappearing into doorways and behind stalls. Fear spread faster than compassion. Ogechi's grip tightened on her bicycle. She had seen fear before, but this was different. This was the kind of fear that made people forget they were human. The man staggered closer. Up close, Ogechi could see the truth in his condition. This was not someone acting. His breathing was uneven. His body trembled from exhaustion. Whatever had happened to him, it was real. Their eyes met. For a moment, everything else faded. "Please," he whispered again. Ogechi's heart pounded. Her mind raced through everything she had been taught. Don't get involved. Protect your family. Avoid trouble. Survive first. But something else spoke louder. Something she could not silence. Before she could respond, the sound came. Motorcycles, fast, aggressive. The kind that didn't slow down for crowds. Heads turned, then they appeared. 3 motorcycles burst into the market path, forcing people to scatter. The riders wore no uniforms, but there was something about them that felt official, dangerous, controlled. They stopped abruptly. One man jumped off. Tall, broad shoulders, eyes that scanned like a hunter. "There he is," he said calmly. The injured man froze. The crowd grew quieter. The man stepped forward, addressing everyone. "That man," he said, pointing directly at the injured stranger, "is a criminal." Murmurs spread immediately. "He has stolen money," the man continued. "Company money, millions. And now he is running." People shifted. Fear turned into judgment. Anyone helping him, the man added, his voice now harder, will be treated as an accomplice. Silence. Heavy. Deliberate. Ogechi felt her chest tighten. The injured man shook his head weakly. "That's not—" "Be quiet," one of the riders snapped. The tall man stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to sound reasonable. "You people don't want trouble," he said. "We are handling this." And just like that, the market chose safety over truth. Doors closed. Eyes turned away. No one spoke. No one moved. Ogechi stood still, her bicycle beside her, her large woven basket resting behind her, like it always did. But for the first time, it felt different, heavy, important. The injured man looked around, desperate, abandoned. His eyes landed on Ogechi again, not because she had said anything, but because she had not turned away. Something passed between them, not trust, not yet, but recognition. He took a step toward her. The riders noticed immediately. "You," one of them shouted. "Stop." The man staggered forward anyway. Ogechi's heart began to race. This was the moment that divides lives, before and after. Everything she had, her family, her fragile stability, her already difficult life, could be destroyed by one wrong decision. And yet, she saw her father's face. She saw the day no one helped him. She saw her mother coughing through the night. She saw the old woman yesterday reaching for food in the dirt. She saw herself, and she knew. The man reached her. "Please," he whispered, barely able to stand. "Just hide me." Behind him, the men were already moving, closing in, fast. Ogechi didn't think anymore. She acted. She dropped her bicycle to the side, pulled the basket strap loose, lifted the cover. Inside, she said quickly. The man hesitated only a second, then climbed in, folding his body painfully into the cramped space. Ogechi grabbed a torn sack and covered him with vegetables and empty cartons. Her hands moved faster than her fear. Just as she secured the cover, the men arrived. "Hey!" one shouted. Ogechi turned slowly, forcing her breathing to steady. "Yes, sir. Did you see a man run this way?" She blinked, her face blank with practiced innocence. "A man," she repeated. "People are running everywhere, sir." The tall man stepped closer. His eyes scanned her, then the basket, then back to her face. "What is in there?" "Deliveries," Ogechi said simply. He moved toward it. Ogechi felt her pulse in her throat. If he opened it, everything would end. He reached out, then paused. His nose wrinkled slightly. "What is that smell?" Ogechi didn't hesitate. She grabbed a small bucket nearby and tipped it, spilling stale fish water onto the ground beside the basket. The smell rose instantly, sharp, unpleasant. The man stepped back instinctively. "Ah, what is wrong with you?" he snapped. "Sorry, sir," Ogechi said quickly. "Spoiled fish from earlier delivery." The other men laughed lightly, stepping away from the smell. The tall man looked irritated, but not convinced. He stared at her one last time, then exhaled. "Let's go," he said. The motorcycles started again. Within seconds, they were gone. The noise faded. The tension broke. The market slowly returned to life. People stepped out again. Voices resumed, as if nothing had happened. Ogechi stood still, her hands trembling slightly. Behind her, inside the basket, a man was breathing, alive, because of her, and for the first time, she realized something terrifying. This was no longer just her life. It had become something else, something dangerous, something she could not undo. For a few seconds after the motorcycles disappeared, Ogechi could not move. The market noise returned slowly, like a radio being turned back on after a sudden blackout. Voices rose again. Traders resumed shouting prices. Customers continued bargaining. Life, as always, refused to pause for anyone's fear. But inside Ogechi, everything had already changed. Her hands still rested on the edge of the woven basket. Inside it, a man was breathing, alive, because she had chosen not to turn away. She swallowed hard, forcing her body to respond. "Move," she whispered to herself. Carefully, she lifted the bicycle upright. The basket shifted slightly with the added weight, and for a terrifying moment she thought the man inside might make a sound. He didn't. Ogechi exhaled slowly. Then she began to walk, not ride. Walk. Her instincts told her speed would attract attention, so she blended into the crowd, instead moving like every other tired market worker pushing goods from one stall to another. But nothing about this was normal. Every step felt louder. Every face felt suspicious. Every shadow looked like it might belong to one of the men who had just left. Stay calm, she told herself. Just walk. She turned left instead of right, choosing a longer, narrower path. Through the inner parts of the market where the stalls were packed tighter and movement slowed naturally. If anyone followed, they would struggle to push through. Good. She passed Mama Sede's stall. Ogechi, the older woman, called. You haven't delivered those? Later, Ogechi replied quickly, not stopping. Mama Sede frowned. That was unlike her. Ogechi never delayed work. But today was not a normal day. She kept moving. Through fabric lines, past shoe sellers, across a section where second-hand electronics were stacked in dusty piles. The basket grew heavier with each step, not just from the man inside, but from the weight of what she had done. Why did you do this? Her mind asked. You could have walked away. You have your own problems. But another voice answered quietly. So did he. She reached a quieter corner of the market and stopped beside a closed stall. Her heart pounded. Her throat felt dry. She leaned closer to the basket. Are you alive? She whispered. For a moment, nothing. Then yes, came a faint reply. Relief washed through her so suddenly it almost made her dizzy. Don't talk, she said quickly. We're not safe yet. She looked around again. No one seemed to be watching. Still, she knew better. In Lagos, danger did not always look like danger. She resumed walking. But now she changed direction again, heading toward the back exit of the market instead of the main road. That path led through a maze of narrow alleys, broken drainage channels, and low-income housing clusters. It wasn't safe, but it was hidden. And right now, hidden mattered more than safe. The basket shifted again. This time, the man inside let out a soft groan. Ogechi froze. Please, he whispered weakly. I can't breathe well. Her eyes widened. Of course, the basket, the tight space, the heat. She had hidden him, but she might also suffocate him. Just a little longer, she said, her voice shaking slightly. We're almost there. She wasn't sure if that was true, but she needed it to be. She picked up her pace slightly, ignoring the burn in her legs. The alleys grew narrower. The noise of the main market faded behind her. Now only distant voices and the occasional bark of a dog filled the air. She reached a turn she knew well, a small passage between two crumbling walls that led toward the residential compound where she lived. She stopped again, listened. Nothing, no engines, no shouting, no footsteps chasing her. Still she waited. 1 minute, then another. Only when she was certain did she move again. Finally, she reached the compound gate. It creaked slightly as she pushed it open. Inside, life continued as usual. Children played with a worn-out ball. A woman washed clothes in a plastic basin. Someone argued loudly over borrowed money. No one noticed anything unusual. Ogechi exhaled. For the first time since the chase began, she felt a small sense of safety, but only small. She pushed the bicycle across the compound and stopped outside her door. Her hands trembled again. This was the point of no return. Once she brought him inside, everything would become real. There would be no pretending this was just a moment. She looked down at the basket, then at the door, then back at the basket. Why me? She whispered. No answer came. There never was. Ogechi opened the door. The room was quiet. Mama Ifeoma was asleep. Chidi was still at school. Good. No questions. Not yet. She quickly wheeled the bicycle inside and shut the door behind her. Then she turned to the basket. Okay, she said softly. Come out slowly. There was a pause, then movement. Painful. Careful. The man pushed the covering aside and tried to lift himself out, but his body failed him halfway. He collapsed onto the floor. Ogechi rushed forward, instinctively catching his shoulder before his head hit the ground. Careful, she whispered. Up close, the damage was worse than she thought. His face was pale beneath the dust. His lips were dry, and the blood on his shirt had spread further. You're bleeding badly, she said. He tried to speak, but only a weak breath came out. Ogechi looked around quickly. There was no proper medical equipment, no bandages, no hospital nearby she could trust. Just her, and whatever she could manage. Stay awake, she said firmly. She grabbed a small basin, poured water into it, and tore a piece from one of her old wrappers. When she returned, he was barely conscious. Hey, she said, tapping his face lightly, don't sleep. His eyes opened slightly. You saved me, he whispered. Don't thank me yet, she replied. You might still die in my room. A faint, weak smile touched his lips. Even now, even like this. That surprised her. Ogechi cleaned the wound as gently as she could. He winced, his body tightening with pain. I know, she said quietly, but if I don't clean it, it will get worse. He nodded weakly. Your name, she said. What is your name? There was a pause, as if the answer itself carried weight. Then Tunde, he said softly. Tunde Adeyemi. Ogechi froze for half a second. The name felt familiar, but she couldn't place it. Not yet. Okay, Tunde, she said slowly. Right now, you are in my house. That means one thing. He looked at her, struggling to focus. You will not bring trouble to my family, she continued. Do you understand? He held her gaze. There was something in his eyes, not fear, not exactly, something deeper. I don't want trouble, he said quietly. Ogechi studied him for a moment, then nodded. Good, she said. Outside the compound, noise continued as if nothing had happened. But inside that small room, everything had already changed. Ogechi had brought danger into her home, a stranger, a hunted man, a secret, and somewhere beyond the walls of that fragile space. The people searching for him were not finished. They were just getting started. The room felt smaller than ever, not because the walls had moved, but because danger had entered and refused to leave. Ogechi sat on the floor beside Tunde, her fingers stained faintly with his blood. The torn cloth she had used as a bandage was already darkening, but at least the bleeding had slowed. For now. Tunde lay against the wall, his breathing uneven but steadier than before. Sweat clung to his forehead. Every few seconds his body flinched as if the pain came in waves he could not control. Ogechi watched him carefully, not with trust, not yet, but with responsibility. She had made a choice, and now she had to live inside it. You need rest, she said quietly. Tunde gave a weak nod but didn't close his eyes. Instead, he looked around the room, the cracked walls, the small cooking corner, the empty food container near the door, the single shelf with medicine bottles. Everything spoke without words. This was not a place where people hid secrets. This was a place where people barely survived. You live here? He asked softly. Ogechi glanced at him. You can see that. He swallowed. With your family. Yes. A pause. Then I'm sorry. That made her look at him properly. For what? For bringing this into your life. Ogechi held his gaze for a moment, then she looked away. You didn't bring it, she said. I chose it. Silence filled the space between them. Heavy. Real. From outside, voices drifted in the normal sounds of the compound. Laughter, argument, a radio playing distant music. Life continued, but inside this room everything felt fragile. Ogechi stood up and poured a small cup of water. Drink. Tunde took it slowly, his hand shaking slightly. After a few sips, he leaned back again. You should go to a hospital, Ogechi said. He shook his head immediately. No, you are injured. I know. You could die. I know. Then why they are watching, he said quietly. Ogechi stopped. They will check hospitals, he continued. Any place I go, they will find me. The certainty in his voice was not fear, it was knowledge. That unsettled her more. Who are they? She asked. Tunde hesitated, then looked at her again. People who don't want me alive. That answer wasn't enough, but it was all he was willing to give. Ogechi folded her arms. You said at the market they were lying. They are. They called you a criminal. I'm not. They said you stole money. I didn't. They said you are dangerous. A pause. Then Tunde gave a faint, tired smile, only to them. Ogechi frowned slightly. That wasn't the answer of a simple man. That wasn't the voice of someone small. Something about him didn't fit. His words, his calm, even his silence. It didn't match the story she had been told, but she pushed the thought aside. Right now, survival came first. Listen, she said firmly, you can stay here for now, but only until you are strong enough to leave. Tunde nodded slowly. I understand. And you don't go outside. I won't. And if anyone comes, I'll hide. Ogechi exhaled. Good. At least he understood the rules. Just then, a sound. Footsteps. Outside the door. Ogechi froze. Tunde's eyes widened slightly. The footsteps stopped right in front of the room. Then a knock. 3 sharp hits. Ogechi's heart jumped. Who is it she called, trying to keep her voice steady? It's me, a familiar voice replied. Madame Abeli, the landlord. Ogechi closed her eyes for a second. Not now. Of all times, not now. She turned quickly to Tunde. Don't move, she whispered. He nodded. She grabbed an old cloth and threw it over him, then pulled a small curtain across the corner where he sat. It barely hid anything, but it was something. The knock came again, louder this time. Ogechi. Open the door, I'm coming, she called. She wiped her hands quickly on her skirt, then opened the door just enough to step outside, blocking the entrance with her body. Madame Abel stood there, arms folded tightly. A woman who had turned collecting rent into a personality. You are inside, she said sharply. But you didn't open immediately. Why? I was resting. Resting, Madame Abeli scoffed. With unpaid rent, Ogechi lowered her eyes slightly. I'm working on it. You have been working on it for 2 weeks. I will pay. When soon? That word again. Madame Abeli leaned closer, her voice dropping. You think this is Charity House? If you don't pay by tomorrow, I will remove your things. Ogechi's chest tightened. Please. No, please. Money. I just need more time. Time does not pay rent. Ogechi swallowed. Inside the room, she could feel Tunde's presence like a second heartbeat. If Madame Abeli stepped inside, everything would collapse. I will find the money, Ogechi said firmly. The landlord studied her face. Suspicious, calculating. Then her eyes moved slightly toward the door. I want to check something inside, she said. Ogechi's heart dropped. Why? She asked quickly. I heard a sound. It's my mother. I will see. She stepped forward. Ogechi moved, immediately blocking her path. She is resting. Ogechi said, please, move. No. The word came out before Ogechi could stop it. Silence. Madame Abeli's eyes narrowed. You are hiding something. Ogechi forced herself not to react. I'm hiding my poverty, she said quietly. Is that not enough? The older woman stared at her for a long moment, then scoffed. You poor people always have secrets, she muttered. She stepped back. Tomorrow, she said, if I don't see my money, your things will be outside. Then she turned and walked away. Ogechi didn't move until she was gone. Only then did she open the door and step back inside, closing it quickly behind her. Her body sagged slightly with relief. Tunde pushed the cloth aside. That was close, he said. Ogechi let out a breath. Too close. She looked at him. Really looked this time. You hear that, she said. That is my life. Tunde said nothing. My mother is sick, she continued. My brother needs school fees. I can't pay rent. And now she gestured toward him. You? Silence again. Then quietly, I will fix it. Ogechi almost laughed. Fix it, she repeated. With what Tunde met her eyes. With time. Ogechi shook her head slowly. Time is the one thing I don't have. Outside, somewhere in the distance, a motorcycle engine roared past. Ogechi's body tensed instantly. Tunde heard it too. They both went still, listening, waiting. The sound faded, but the fear didn't. because now they both knew the truth. The men searching for him were not done. Night came slowly, but it did not bring peace. It brought questions and silence. The small room was dim lit only by a weak bulb that flickered occasionally, as if even electricity struggled to survive in that part of Lagos. Mama Ifeoma slept restlessly, her breath uneven, her body turning slightly as pain moved through her like a quiet storm. Chidi had returned from school earlier, full of stories that Ogechi barely heard. She had nodded at the right moments, smiled when needed, and avoided looking toward the corner where Tunde lay hidden behind a thin curtain. Now the boy slept, and the truth sat in the room like something alive. Ogechi sat on the floor, her back against the wall, her arms folded tightly across her chest. Tunde watched her. "You should rest," he said quietly. Ogechi didn't respond immediately. "I don't sleep well when I don't understand what is happening," she said finally. Tunde exhaled slowly. "That makes two of us." Ogechi turned her head slightly, her eyes sharp now. "No," she said. "You understand exactly what is happening." Silence followed. Not empty silence, heavy silence, the kind that demands truth. "You said you are not a criminal?" she continued. "You said those men were lying. They are. Then explain." Tunde looked down at his hands. For the first time since she had met him, hesitation showed clearly on his face. "I can't tell you everything," he said. Ogechi let out a short, dry laugh. "Of course. It's not that I don't want to. It's that you don't trust me. That's not—" "Then what is it?" she cut in her voice, rising slightly before she caught herself and lowered it again. "You are in my house. My family is here. Men are searching for you. And you want me to just believe." Tunde met her eyes. "I'm trying to protect you." Ogechi shook her head slowly. "No," she said. "You are protecting yourself." The words landed harder than she expected, because they were true. Tunde didn't argue. Instead, he leaned back, slightly wincing as pain shot through his side. "I worked for a company," he said carefully, "a large one." Ogechi stayed silent. "Something happened," he continued. "Money, accounts, things that didn't make sense. And you ran." "I didn't run," he said quietly. "I was forced to." "By who?" Another pause. "My own people." That answer made Ogechi frown. "Your own people." He nodded. "They want me gone." "Why?" "Because I know too much." Ogechi studied him. His voice was calm. Too calm. Not the voice of a desperate man telling a lie, but not the full truth either. "You expect me to believe that she asked." "I expect you to decide if you want to keep helping me," he replied. Ogechi looked away. That wasn't an answer, but it was something. Outside, the compound had grown quieter. The usual evening noise had faded into scattered voices and distant music. Inside, tension remained. "You said you need time," Ogechi said after a while. "Yes." "How much?" 2 days. Ogechi let out a slow breath. 2 days, she repeated. 48 hours, Tunde said. "After that, I won't be your problem anymore." Ogechi almost smiled. "You are already my problem." A faint smile touched his lips, then disappeared. "Please," he said quietly, that word again, the same word he had used in the market, but now it carried something different, not desperation, hope. Ogechi closed her eyes briefly. 2 days. In 2 days she had to find money for rent, medicine for her mother, school fees for Chidi, and now protect a man who might be telling half the truth. She opened her eyes again. "You stay," she said finally. 2 days. Tunde nodded. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," she replied. "If anything happens to my family, it won't. You don't know that. I will make sure." Ogechi didn't respond, because promises were easy. Reality was not. Just then a sudden sound, a loud knock, not like before. This one was harder, urgent. Both of them froze. Chidi stirred in his sleep. Mama Ifeoma coughed softly. The knock came again. Ogechi, a male voice called. Not Madame Ebele. Someone else. Ogechi stood slowly. Her heart began to race again. "Stay quiet," she whispered to Tunde. He nodded. She moved toward the door carefully and opened it slightly. Outside stood two men, not in uniforms, but their presence felt official, dangerous. "Good evening," one of them said. Ogechi forced a polite expression. "Good evening. We are looking for someone." "Of course." Her chest tightened. "I don't know anything," she said quickly. The man smiled slightly. "I didn't ask yet." Ogechi said nothing. "We have information," he continued, "that a suspicious man entered this compound." Silence. "We are checking all rooms." Ogechi's heartbeat became louder in her ears. "My mother is sick," she said. "My brother is sleeping. There is no one else here. We will confirm." He stepped forward. Ogechi blocked the door again. "Please," she said. "Don't wake them." The second man glanced past her shoulder, trying to see inside. "You are nervous," he said. "I am poor," Ogechi replied. "And men like you don't visit people like me for good reasons?" The first man studied her, then glanced at his partner, then back at her. "You won't mind if we check?" Ogechi's throat went dry. Inside, behind a thin curtain, everything could be exposed. Everything could end. She thought quickly, faster than fear. "My mother is not dressed," she said suddenly. That made them pause. "She is weak," Ogechi added. "If strangers enter like that, she could panic." The men hesitated, just long enough. Then a loud cough came from inside. Mama Ifeoma, real, painful, unexpected. The sound echoed into the doorway. The two men exchanged a look. Annoyance, discomfort, risk. Finally, the first man stepped back. "We will return," he said. Ogechi nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." They turned and walked away, not far, just to the next room, continuing their search. Ogechi closed the door slowly. Her hands shook now. She leaned against it, breathing hard. Inside the room, Tunde hadn't moved, but his eyes said everything. That had been too close, too real. Ogechi looked at him. "You see," she whispered, "this is not a game." Tunde nodded. "I know." "No," she said. "You are starting to know." Outside footsteps moved again. Voices, doors opening, questions being asked. The search wasn't over. It had only begun. And inside that small room, time was running out faster than either of them had planned. While Ogechi sat in the dim light of her small room, holding fear together with nothing but willpower. Somewhere else in Lagos, the truth wore a very different face. Far from the crowded alleys of Ajagunle, in a part of the city where silence was bought with money and power, a glass-walled office overlooked the skyline. Inside, a man stood by the window. Femi Adeyemi did not look like someone chasing a wounded man through a market. He looked like success. Tailored suit, perfect posture, controlled expression. But beneath that calm exterior lived something sharper, something calculated. Behind him, a large screen displayed live updates, locations, movements, messages from men on the ground. He was seen entering the market, one of the men reported through the speaker. "We lost him in the crowd." Femi didn't turn. "Lost," he repeated quietly. "Yes, sir." Silence followed, the kind that made even confident men uncomfortable. Then Femi spoke again. "And you're calling me to tell me that the man you were chasing disappeared." "It was crowded, sir, everything in Lagos is crowded." Femi cut in calmly. "That is not an excuse. That is the environment." He turned slowly now. His eyes were cold, focused. "Find him." "Yes, sir." "And listen carefully," Femi added, stepping closer to the screen. "He is injured. That means he will look for shelter, food, help." The man on the other end hesitated. "You think someone will help him?" Femi's lips curved slightly. "People always help," he said. "That is their weakness." He walked back toward his desk. "So don't search for him," he continued. "Search for the person who was foolish enough to help him." The line went quiet. Understanding settled in. "Yes, sir." The call ended. Femi stood alone again. For a moment his reflection stared back at him through the glass. Then another voice spoke from behind. "You're certain he doesn't have the evidence?" Femi didn't need to turn to know who it was. Nana Yeboah. The chief financial officer, elegant, sharp, dangerous in a quieter way. He doesn't, Femi replied. And if he does, Femi picked up a glass of water, then paused. Then we make sure no one believes him. Nana crossed her arms. You're underestimating him. No, Femi said calmly. I'm correcting a mistake I should have fixed earlier. Nana studied him. You trusted him once. That was before I realized trust is expensive. And betrayal. Femi took a slow sip of water. Cheaper than losing everything. Nana walked closer to the desk. The board meeting is in 3 days, she said. If he shows up, he won't. And if he does, Femi placed the glass down. Then we remind everyone who controls the narrative. Silence settled between them. Outside the window, Lagos moved like it always did, unaware of the quiet war being fought above it. Back in Ajagunle, that war had already reached Ogechi's door. Inside her room, the tension had not left. If anything, it had deepened. Ogechi sat near the door, listening to every movement outside. Footsteps passed, voices rose and fell, doors opened and closed. Each sound made her body tense. Tunde remained behind the curtain silent, but his mind was not still. He had heard enough. The men outside, the questions, the pattern. They're getting closer, he said quietly. Ogechi didn't turn. I know. They won't stop. I know that too. A pause. Then you should leave me, Tunde said. That made her turn. What you should let me go, he repeated. If they find me here, they will find me too, she finished. He nodded. Yes. Ogechi stood up slowly. You think I don't understand that I don't want your family to suffer because of me. Ogechi walked closer. Her eyes were steady now. Too late, she said simply. Tunde held her gaze. You still have a choice. Ogechi shook her head. No, she said. That choice ended the moment I opened that basket. Silence again. But this time, it felt different. Less uncertain, more real. What kind of man are you? Ogechi asked suddenly. Tunde hesitated. That depends who is asking. I am asking. He studied her face, her strength, her exhaustion, her stubborn refusal to walk away. Then he answered, I am someone who trusted the wrong people. Ogechi didn't look convinced. That is not enough. It's all I can give you for now. She sighed. You speak like someone who has never been poor. That statement landed harder than any accusation. Tunde didn't deny it. I've been blind, he admitted quietly. Ogechi folded her arms. Blind people don't get chased across markets. A faint, humorless smile crossed his face. No, he said, but powerful ones do. Ogechi froze slightly. There it was, a crack in the story. Powerful, she repeated. Tunde looked at her, then looked away. Forget I said that. No, Ogechi said firmly. I won't. He stayed silent. Ogechi stepped closer. You are not who you said you are. Tunde exhaled slowly. I told you. You told me half-truths, she cut in, and half-truths are still lies. Silence stretched between them. Then I can't tell you everything yet, Tunde said. Why? Because the more you know, the more dangerous it becomes. Ogechi let out a small, frustrated laugh. It is already dangerous. Yes, he said, but not like that. She studied him, and for the first time, she saw it clearly. This man was not just hiding from danger. He was part of something bigger, something far beyond her world, and somehow, she was now inside it. Before she could speak again, another sound outside, this time closer. Voices, returning. Ogechi's body tensed instantly. They're back, she whispered. Tunde straightened slightly despite the pain. They won't leave this time, he said. Ogechi looked around the room quickly. There was nowhere else to hide him, nowhere new, nowhere safe. Her mind raced. Think, think, think. Then her eyes landed on the basket. Still in the corner, still ordinary, still invisible to everyone else. Her breath slowed. Get inside again, she said. Tunde looked at her. Again, yes. They might check. They didn't before. That was luck. Then we use it again. The footsteps outside grew louder, closer, no time left. Tunde didn't argue again. He moved, painfully, quickly, back into the basket. Ogechi covered him again, this time more carefully, more tightly. Her hands moved with precision now, not fear, strategy. Just as she stepped back, a loud knock hit the door. Ogechi, open. Different voice, rougher, more aggressive. Ogechi straightened, wiped her face, stepped forward, and opened the door. Standing outside, 3 men. Not the same as before. These ones didn't smile. Didn't explain. Didn't pretend. One of them stepped forward. We're checking every room, he said. Ogechi held the door. My mother is sick. We don't care. Her heart dropped. This time, there would be no easy way out. The air inside the room tightened the moment the man said, we don't care. Ogechi's fingers curled slightly against the wooden door. Behind her, the basket sat in the corner, quiet, ordinary, hiding a truth that could destroy everything. She forced herself to breathe evenly. My mother is not well, she said again, her voice softer this time, but firm. Please, she needs rest. The man in front stepped closer. His face carried no patience. No problem, he replied. We will be quick. Before Ogechi could respond, he pushed the door wider and stepped inside. The other 2 followed. Just like that. The boundary between danger and safety disappeared. Ogechi stepped back slowly, her body instinctively placing itself between them and the deeper part of the room. Mama Ifeoma stirred weakly on the bed. Chidi turned in his sleep but did not wake. Search, the man ordered. The second man moved toward the small shelf. The third glanced toward the cooking corner. Everything felt too loud, too close. Ogechi's heartbeat pounded in her ears as she watched every movement. Please, she said, trying again. There is nothing here, be quiet. One of them snapped. She did. Not because she wanted to, but because she understood something now. Talking too much could expose more than silence. The man near the shelf picked up one of the medicine bottles. Who is sick? He asked. My mother. What is wrong with her? Ogechi hesitated. Her chest, breathing problem. He nodded slightly uninterested and dropped the bottle back. Another man kicked lightly at the small stool, then glanced under the bed. Nothing. Still they moved deeper, closer, closer to the basket. Ogechi felt it, like a slow tightening around her throat. Think, her mind whispered. Do something. But what the man in front turned toward the corner. His eyes landed on it. The basket. Of course. It was the largest object in the room. Impossible to ignore. What is that? He asked. Ogechi stepped forward slightly. My work basket. For what deliveries? He walked toward it. Every step felt like the end of something. Ogechi's mind raced. If he opened it, everything would collapse. Her family, her life, Tunde, all of it. Wait, she said quickly. The man paused. What, it smells? Ogechi added. He frowned. What? It carries food, she said. Fish, beans, sometimes spoiled things. I haven't washed it yet. The man's nose wrinkled slightly, but he didn't stop. He reached for the edge. Ogechi's heart slammed. Inside the basket, Tunde did not move, did not breathe loudly, did not exist. Just as the man touched the cover, a sudden cough exploded from the bed. Violent, deep, uncontrolled. Mama Ifeoma. The sound cut through the room like a blade. The men turned instinctively. Ogechi moved immediately. Mama, she rushed to her side, kneeling beside the bed. Mama Ifeoma's body shook as the cough continued, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Chidi woke up abruptly. Mama, he cried. Fear spread instantly. Not fake, not planned. Real. The kind of chaos no one could ignore. Ogechi grabbed the cup of water, lifting her mother carefully. It's okay. Mama, breathe. Breathe. Mama Ifeoma gasped weakly, clutching her chest. The men hesitated. This was no longer a search. This was a sick woman struggling to breathe. Maybe we should go. one of them muttered. The first man looked irritated, but uncertain. Ogechi didn't stop. "Please," she said, her voice breaking now, not entirely acting. "She needs air. Please, you're making it worse." Mama Ifeoma coughed again harder. Chidi began to cry quietly beside the bed. The room shifted from suspicion to discomfort to something close to guilt. Finally, the first man stepped back. "We'll come again," he said. Ogechi didn't answer. She was focused entirely on her mother. The men turned, walked out. The door remained open for a second longer than necessary, then closed. Silence. Heavy. Unreal. For a moment no one moved. Then slowly, Mama Ifeoma's coughing eased. Her breathing steadied. Chidi wiped his eyes. "They're gone," he whispered. Ogechi nodded. "They're gone." Her voice trembled slightly now. Not from fear alone, but from what had just happened. She turned her head slowly toward the basket. Still untouched, still closed, still hiding a life. Ogechi stood up carefully and walked toward it. Her legs felt weak, her hands unsteady. She knelt and pulled the cover aside. Tunde lay inside, his eyes open, silent, still, but alive. For a few seconds neither of them spoke. "Then that," he said softly, "was not planned." Ogechi let out a shaky breath. "No." They both looked toward the bed. Mama Ifeoma had saved them, without knowing, without choosing, just by being sick. Ogechi swallowed hard. This was becoming something else, something beyond control. She helped Tunde out of the basket again. He winced as he sat against the wall. "They're getting closer," he said. "I know, they won't stop checking. I know that too." Silence settled again. But now it carried something heavier. Reality. "What do we do?" Tunde asked. Ogechi didn't answer immediately. She looked around her small room, at her mother, at her brother, at the basket, at the door, everything she had, everything at risk. Then she spoke. "You don't stay here anymore." Tunde looked at her. "What, they will come back," she said. "Next time they won't hesitate." "And where do I go?" Ogechi's eyes hardened slightly. "I will take you out." "In this condition you walked into a market half dead," she replied. "You can move again." Tunde watched her. "You're risking everything." Ogechi nodded slowly. "I already did." A pause. "Then why?" he asked. The question hung in the air. Simple, but heavy. Ogechi looked at him. Really looked. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Maybe because no one helped my father." The words came quietly, but they carried years inside them. Tunde didn't respond, because there was nothing to say. Outside night had fully settled, but danger had not. If anything, it was closer than ever. Ogechi stood up and moved toward her bicycle, toward the basket, toward the only plan she had. "We leave before morning," she said. Tunde nodded, because now they both understood the truth. Staying was no longer survival. It was waiting to be caught. The night did not feel long enough. Ogechi did not sleep. She sat with her back against the wall, eyes open, listening to every sound the compound made. Footsteps, whispers, doors opening and closing. Distant laughter that sounded almost wrong in a night filled with tension. Beside her, Tunde drifted in and out of shallow sleep, his body too weak to rest fully, his mind too alert to let go. Every time he shifted, Ogechi looked at him, not with pity, not with trust, but with awareness. He was the reason everything had changed, and yet she had chosen him. By the time the sky began to lighten, Ogechi was already preparing. "We leave now," she said quietly. Tunde opened his eyes slowly. His face looked worse in the early light, paler, more fragile, but still determined. He nodded. "I can walk." "You will have to," she replied. Ogechi moved quickly. She packed what little she could, one extra cloth, a small bottle of water, and a few remaining coins. She tied her scarf tightly, securing it, like armor. Then she turned to Chidi. He was still asleep. For a moment, Ogechi hesitated. Her hand hovered over his shoulder. Then she gently shook him. "Chidi," she whispered. He stirred. "Sister, I need you to listen carefully." His eyes opened slowly, confusion replacing sleep. "What is it?" "I have to go out early," she said. "Very early. That's normal, not today." Something in her voice made him sit up. "What's wrong?" Ogechi forced a calm expression. "Nothing is wrong. I just need you to stay here. Don't open the door for anyone." "Why just do as I say?" Chidi studied her face. He was young, but not blind. "You're scared," he said softly. Ogechi paused, then shook her head slightly. "I'm careful." "That means scared." She almost smiled. "Stay with Mama," she said. "If anything happens, call Mama Sade." Chidi nodded slowly. "Okay." Ogechi touched his shoulder briefly, then stood. "No more time." She turned to Tunde. "Can you stand?" He pushed himself up, slowly gripping the wall for support. Pain flashed across his face, but he didn't fall. "That's enough," she said. We moved slowly. She led him to the bicycle. The basket waited, familiar, ordinary, invisible to everyone else. Tunde looked at it. "You really think this will work again?" Ogechi met his eyes. "It worked once. That was luck." "This is Lagos," she replied. "Sometimes luck is all people like me have." Tunde didn't argue. He climbed into the basket again this time, more carefully, more aware of the discomfort. Ogechi covered him quickly, tighter, better hidden. Then she pushed the bicycle toward the door. Before stepping out, she looked back once at her mother, at her brother, at everything she could lose. Then she stepped outside. The compound was quieter than usual. Morning hadn't fully begun. Good. Less attention. She moved steadily, pushing the bicycle toward the gate. Every step felt exposed. Every sound felt louder, but no one stopped her. Not yet. Once outside, she didn't ride immediately. She walked, slow, natural. Just another delivery girl starting early. The streets were waking up, vendors setting up, buses warming engines, men stretching after long nights, life preparing to begin again. Ogechi blended into it. But inside the basket, danger moved with her. After several minutes, she turned into a narrower road, then another, avoiding main paths, avoiding crowds, avoiding attention. "Where are we going?" Tunde whispered faintly from inside. Ogechi didn't look back. "Somewhere they won't expect." "That's not a place. It is for people like us." They moved in silence after that. The sun began to rise fully now, casting light over the city. With light came more people, more eyes, more risk. Ogechi wiped sweat from her forehead. Her arms were already aching from pushing the added weight. Still, she didn't stop. She couldn't. Not now. As they approached a busier junction, she slowed. Too many people, too open, too visible. She hesitated. Then a voice. "Ogechi." Her heart dropped. She turned. Mama Sade, of all people. The older woman stood near her food stall, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "What are you doing this early?" she asked. Ogechi forced a smile. "Deliveries." Mama Sade frowned. "At this hour, customers don't sleep. Don't lie to me." Ogechi's smile faded slightly. "I'm not lying." Mama Sade stepped closer. Her eyes moved to the basket, then back to Ogechi's face. "You are sweating too much for someone doing normal work," she said quietly. Ogechi said nothing. For a moment, it felt like everything might be exposed. Then Mama Sade leaned closer. Her voice dropped. "What did you carry this time?" Ogechi's breath caught. "I don't understand." "Yes, you do." Their eyes locked. And in that moment, something passed between them. Not suspicion, not judgment, recognition. Mama Sade straightened. Then, without another word, she turned away. "Go," she muttered. "Before I start asking questions I don't want answers to." Ogechi didn't hesitate. "Thank you," she whispered. She pushed the bicycle forward again, faster now, because time was closing in behind them. Mama Sade watched, her face serious, concerned, because she knew something. Not everything, but enough. And sometimes, knowing a little was more dangerous than knowing nothing. Ogechi turned into another narrow street, then another. Finally she stopped, breathing hard, her arms shaking. "We're here," she said. Tunde didn't respond immediately. Then, "Where is here?" Ogechi looked ahead. A rundown building. Old. Almost forgotten. "This is where people hide when they have nowhere else," she said. Tunde shifted inside the basket. "You trust this place?" Ogechi shook her head. "No." "Then why? Because it's better than being found." Silence. "Then help me out," he said. Ogechi nodded. She uncovered the basket and helped him step out slowly. He leaned heavily against the wall, weak but still standing. For now. They had made it this far, but both of them knew the truth. This was not escape. It was only delay. And somewhere in the city, people were still searching, still closing in, still hunting. The building smelled of dust-damp wood and forgotten lives. Ogechi pushed the door open slowly, her shoulder pressing against the warped wood until it gave way with a low creak. Inside, the air was thick and still, as if it had been waiting too long for movement. "This place," Tunde murmured weakly behind her, "is not meant to be comfortable," Ogechi replied. "It's meant to be ignored." That was its value. In Lagos, the safest places were not the strongest or the cleanest. They were the ones no one bothered to see. She guided him inside, helping him sit against a cracked wall near a broken window that barely let in light. Dust rose as he settled, making him cough slightly. Ogechi looked around quickly. No one, no sound. Good. For now. She moved to the window, checking the outside. A narrow street, a few passing figures. No motorcycles, no men scanning corners. But that didn't mean safety. It only meant delay. She turned back to Tunde. "You stay here," she said. "I'll go and come back." Tunde's eyes sharpened slightly despite his condition. "Go where?" "To get what we need." "No," he said immediately. Ogechi frowned. "What do you mean, no? It's too dangerous. And staying here without food, water, or medicine is safer." Tunde held her gaze. "If they are looking for me, they are watching places like this." Ogechi crossed her arms. "And they are not watching the streets. They are watching everything." "Exactly," she replied. "So we don't hide and die slowly. We move smart." Tunde studied her. There was something about the way she spoke now. Not fear, not panic, strategy. It surprised him. "You're used to surviving," he said quietly. Ogechi gave a small, humorless smile. "You don't grow up poor without learning that." Silence. Then she turned away. "I'll be back." Tunde shifted slightly, pain flashing across his face. "If you leave, you might not come back." Ogechi paused at the door, then looked over her shoulder. "If I don't leave, we definitely won't survive." That ended the conversation. She stepped out and closed the door behind her. Outside, the city had fully awakened. The streets were alive again, vendors shouting, buses, honking people, rushing, everyone chasing something they could barely hold on to. Ogechi walked fast, not running, never running. Running attracted attention. She blended in. Another tired girl, another worker, another invisible life in a city full of them. But inside her mind, everything was sharp. Every face, every sound, every movement. She needed 3 things: food, water, medicine, and maybe information. She turned toward the market again, the same place where everything had begun, because sometimes the most dangerous place was also the most familiar. As she approached Balogan Market, the noise hit her like a wave, normal, loud, unaware, but beneath it, something had changed. She noticed it immediately. More men, more watching. Not traders, not customers, observers. Her chest tightened slightly. They're still looking, she thought. Of course they were. She lowered her head slightly and moved through the crowd. Mama Sade spotted her almost immediately. "Ogechi," she called. Ogechi walked toward her, trying to appear normal. "You came back," Mama Sade said, studying her face closely. "I need food," Ogechi replied quietly. Mama Sade didn't ask questions. She packed rice quickly, added extra, then leaned closer. They came again. After you left. Ogechi's heart skipped. At the compound, no. Here. Her fingers tightened slightly. What did they say? They are asking about a man, Mama Sade replied. And a girl. Silence. They described your basket. Ogechi felt the ground shift beneath her. How much, she asked, quickly pulling out money. Mama Sade waved her hand. Keep it. I can't. Take it, the older woman said firmly. And listen to me. Ogechi looked at her. Leave this matter, Mama Sade whispered. Whatever you're carrying, Bajitam, it is not your fight. Ogechi hesitated. For a moment, she almost listened. But then she remembered. The market, the basket, the man inside, the choice. I can't, she said softly. Mama Sade shook her head slowly. Then may God follow you. Ogechi nodded once, then turned and walked away. Fast. Because now she knew something important. They weren't just searching. They were narrowing down. She needed to move faster. Back at the building, Tundi sat exactly where she had left him, but his eyes had changed. More alert, more focused. He looked at her as she entered. You took too long. Ogechi dropped the food beside him. They're looking for both of us now. Tundi froze. What? They described the basket, she said. And a girl. Silence. Heavy. Real. Tunde leaned back, slightly closing his eyes. It's getting worse. Yes. Another pause. Then you should leave me, he said again. Ogechi shook her head immediately. No. You don't understand. I understand enough. You could still walk away. Ogechi looked at him, her eyes steady. You think I don't want to? Tundi didn't respond. Every part of me wants to go back to my small life. She continued. My problems, my struggles, my normal. Her voice softened. But I can't pretend I didn't see you. Silence. Then she added quietly, and I can't pretend I didn't choose. Tunde opened his eyes again. For the first time, there was something close to respect in them. You're risking everything, he said. Ogechi gave a small nod. Yes, a pause. Then you deserve the truth. Ogechi's breath caught slightly. Finally. Tunde looked at her directly. My name is Tunde Adeyemi, he said slowly, and I'm not just someone who worked for a company. Ogechi didn't move, didn't blink. I am the company, he continued. Silence. The kind that shifts everything. The CEO of Adeyemi Harvest Group. The words landed, heavy, unreal. Ogechi stared at him. No, she said instinctively. Yes. That's not possible. It is. Ogechi stepped back slightly. Her mind struggled to catch up. The man she had carried, hidden, protected, was not just a victim. He was power, wealth, influence, everything her world had never touched. You lied to me, she said quietly. Tundi didn't deny it. Yes. Anger rose, sharp, sudden. You let me risk my family. I had no choice. You always had a choice, she snapped. Her voice echoed slightly in the empty building. You chose not to trust me. Tundi held her gaze. I was trying to keep you safe. Safe, she laughed bitterly. Look at where I am. Silence followed. Then you're right, he said. That stopped her. I should have told you earlier. Ogechi stared at him, her chest rising and falling slowly. Everything inside her felt unstable, shifting, because this changed everything. And yet it changed nothing, because danger was still outside, closing in. And now, she knew exactly how big it really was. The words did not disappear after he said them. They stayed, hung in the air between them like something too heavy to fall. I am the company. Ogechi stared at Tundi as if the man in front of her had suddenly become someone else entirely. Not the wounded stranger from the market, not the desperate voice inside her basket, but something distant, powerful, dangerous in a way she had never understood before. You're lying, she said quietly. Tundi didn't react. I wish I was, he replied. Ogechi shook her head slowly, taking a step back. No, that doesn't make sense. A CEO doesn't end up bleeding in a market. A CEO doesn't hide inside a basket. A CEO doesn't come into a place like this. Her voice cracked slightly. People like you don't come into lives like mine. Silence. Then Tunde said something unexpected. Exactly. That made her stop. Exactly what I didn't understand your life, he said. Not really. Not until now. Ogechi let out a bitter laugh. So now you understand poverty? Because you spent one night in it? No, he said calmly. I understand fear. That quieted her. Because fear was something she knew. Tunde leaned back slightly against the wall, his strength fading again. I built something, he continued slowly. A company, a system, a structure I believed in, and I trusted the wrong people inside it. Ogechi crossed her arms again. So they are trying to kill you. Yes. For money? For control? He corrected. Same thing she muttered. Tunde almost smiled, but it didn't last. They've already started moving against me publicly, he added. By now, I'm probably being called a criminal everywhere. Ogechi thought of the market, the rumors, the whispers. They said you stole money, she said. They would say worse if they needed to. Silence again. Then Ogechi asked the question that mattered most. Can you prove they are lying? Tunde didn't answer immediately. That was enough. You can't, she said. I can, he replied. But not like this. What does that mean? It means I need access, people, records, time. Ogechi let out a slow breath. All things you don't have, yes. And in the meantime, you expect me to keep risking my life. Tunde met her eyes. I'm not asking you to risk anything anymore. That surprised her. What you've already done enough, he said, more than anyone else would. Ogechi frowned. So what? Now Tunde shifted, slightly wincing. Now? You leave. The words came quietly, but firmly. Ogechi stared at him. You're serious? Yes. You think I'll just walk away now? I think you should, he said, before this gets worse. Ogechi looked at him for a long moment, then shook her head slowly. No. Tunde sighed. Ogechi, no, she repeated stronger now. You don't get to decide that. I'm trying to protect you. And I'm trying to protect my decision, she shot back. Silence. Then she stepped closer. You said something before she continued. You said people helping others is a weakness. Tunde looked at her. That's what they believe in you, she asked. Another pause. Then I used to think that too. Ogechi held his gaze, and now Tunde didn't answer immediately. But something in his eyes changed. Now, I think it's the only reason I'm still alive. That settled something inside her. Not fully, but enough. Before either of them could say more, a sound. Outside, not close, but not far. Engines, more than one. Both of them froze. Tunde's expression hardened. They found us. Ogechi moved quickly to the window, peering through the crack. Down the street. 2 motorcycles and a car, moving slowly, watching, searching. Her chest tightened. They're close, she whispered. Tunde pushed himself up slightly. We have to move. Ogechi turned. To where anywhere but here. You can barely stand. I don't need to run, he said. I just need to not be here when they arrive. Ogechi's mind raced. Think fast. They were running out of time. Then she remembered something. A place, not far, hidden, used by people who didn't want to be found. She turned back to him. They're somewhere else. Tunde didn't ask questions. Let's go. Ogechi grabbed the basket again. No, Tunde said. She stopped. They know the basket now, he added. It's too obvious. Ogechi hesitated. He was right. That advantage was gone. So what do we do? She asked. Tunde looked around quickly, then at her, then at the broken cloth nearby. Help me stand, he said. She did. Slowly, carefully. He leaned heavily on her shoulder. Then he took the cloth and wrapped it around himself loosely, covering the blood, hiding the injury as best as possible. To anyone else, he said quietly, I'm just another sick man. Ogechi nodded slowly. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. They moved toward the door. step by step, every movement painful, every second heavy. Outside, the engines grew louder, closer. Ogechi opened the door slightly, looked out, clear for now. Now she whispered. They stepped out together, into the street, into the open, into the danger. And as they walked, not fast, not slow, just normal, Ogechi realized something terrifying. The game had changed. They were no longer hiding. They were moving in plain sight. And somewhere behind them, the hunters were already closing in. They walked like strangers. That was the only way to survive. Ogechi did not hold Tunde too tightly, even though his weight leaned heavily into her side. To anyone watching, it had to look ordinary. Just a young woman helping a sick relative through the morning streets. Not a hunted CEO, not a girl risking everything. Just another story Lagos would ignore. Don't look back, Ogechi whispered under her breath. I'm not, Tunde replied quietly. But he was listening. So was she. Every engine, every footstep, every shift in the air. The motorcycles had passed the building they left behind. Ogechi saw them from the corner of her eye earlier, slowing, circling, searching. They had been seconds away, maybe less. If they had delayed, if Mama Ifeoma hadn't coughed the night before, if Ogechi had hesitated, everything would have ended. Now they were still moving, but the gap was closing. Where are we going? Tunde asked again, his voice strained. Ogechi didn't answer immediately, because the truth was she wasn't completely sure, not anymore. The place she had planned might already be compromised. The market was no longer safe. The compound was exposed. The abandoned building was discovered. Every place she knew was becoming dangerous. Still, she kept walking. Forward, always forward. We need people, she said finally. Tunde frowned slightly. People. Yes, she replied. Not hiding, not running. People. That's risky. Everything is risky, she said. But alone, we will lose. Tunde didn't argue, because he knew she was right. For the first time in his life, he was alone without power, and he was beginning to understand something deeper than fear. He needed others, not employees, not subordinates, not people paid to obey him. Real people, the kind he had never truly seen before. They turned into a busier street, more noise, more distraction, more cover. Ogechi slowed slightly, adjusting their pace to match the crowd. Then she saw her, at the corner, near a small roadside stall, Mama Koswa, the old woman from the market, the one she had fed, the one people ignored. Ogechi stopped. Tunde felt it immediately. What is it? I know someone, she said. Can we trust her? Ogechi hesitated, then answered honestly, I don't know. She stepped forward anyway. Because sometimes trust wasn't about certainty. It was about choosing. Mama Ogechi called softly. The old woman looked up slowly. Recognition came into her eyes almost instantly. Ogechi, she said. Her voice carried warmth, memory, something deeper. You came back. Ogechi nodded. I need help. The old woman studied her, then looked at Tunde. Her eyes lingered longer than expected. Not with confusion, with awareness. You brought trouble, Mama Kosua said quietly. Ogechi didn't deny it. Yes. A pause. Then, and you still came to me. Yes. The old woman leaned back slightly. Why? Ogechi took a breath. Because yesterday, no one saw you. Mama Kosua's expression changed slightly. And today, you saw me? Yes. Silence. Then Mama Kosua stood up slowly. Her movements were slow, but her presence felt steady, stronger than before. Come, she said. Ogechi blinked. You will help us. The old woman didn't answer directly. She turned and began walking. That was her answer. Ogechi looked at Tunde, then followed. They moved through smaller streets, quieter ones, not the main roads, not the obvious paths. Mama Akosua walked with purpose, not wandering, not guessing. She knew exactly where she was going. Tunde noticed it too. "This isn't random," he whispered. "No," Ogechi replied. Finally, they reached a narrow passage between two buildings, hidden, easy to miss. Mama Akosua stepped inside. They followed. At the end of the passage, a small compound, different from Ogechi's, cleaner, quieter, organized. Several people looked up as they entered, not surprised, not alarmed, just aware. A young boy stopped sweeping. A middle-aged woman paused her cooking. A man repairing a radio lifted his head. No one asked questions, but everyone noticed. Mama Akosua turned to them. "Sit," she said. Ogechi helped Tunde down carefully. The woman who had been cooking approached immediately. "He needs water," she said, without waiting for permission. Another person brought a cloth, someone else cleared space. Ogechi stood there, watching, confused, relieved, suspicious, all at once. "What is this place?" she asked quietly. Mama Akosua looked at her. "This," she said, "is where people survive when the world forgets them." Ogechi swallowed. "And you?" The old woman smiled faintly. "I was never just a woman in the gutter." Tunde looked at her sharply. "I thought so," he said. Mama Akosua turned to him. "And you? I know you?" Silence, heavy. "You are not just any man," she continued. Tunde didn't deny it. No, the people around them continued working, but they were listening, always listening. Mama Akosua stepped closer. "Your company," she said, "Adeyemi Harvest." Tunde's expression changed. "You know it." "I worked there," she said. That stunned both of them. When Tunde asked, "Before you became CEO," she replied. "Before things changed." Ogechi looked between them. "You worked for him. I worked for the company," Mama Akosua corrected. "Before people like him, and people like his enemies, turned it into something else." Tunde leaned forward slightly despite the pain. "What do you know?" Mama Akosua's eyes hardened. "I know enough to understand why they are hunting you." Silence. "Then I know where they hid the truth." Everything stopped. Ogechi felt it. That shift, that moment. The story was no longer just survival. It was becoming something else, something bigger. "What truth?" she asked. Mama Akosua looked at her, then at Tunde, then spoke quietly. "The proof." Tunde's breath slowed. "Proof of what?" "That you didn't steal anything," she said. Silence, heavy, real. Hope entered the room. For the first time, small, fragile, but alive. Ogechi looked at Tunde, then back at Mama Akosua. "Where is it?" The old woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked toward the entrance of the compound, listening, careful. "Then we don't speak everything out loud," she said. Ogechi understood, because outside, the world was still searching, still hunting, still closing in. But now, for the first time, they had something more than fear. They had direction. And maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. Hope, when it finally arrives, does not feel loud. It feels dangerous, like something fragile that could break if spoken too quickly. Ogechi stood still in the quiet compound, her eyes moving between Mama Akosua and Tunde. Her heartbeat no longer driven only by fear, but by something new. Possibility. "You said you know where the proof is," Ogechi said carefully. Mama Akosua nodded once. "I said I know where it was hidden," she corrected. Tunde leaned forward despite the pain tightening his face. Where Mama Akosua did not answer immediately. Instead, she looked around the compound. The people nearby were still moving, still working, but now their attention had sharpened. Quietly, subtly. They were listening, measuring every word. Then she spoke. "There is a storage facility," she said, "not listed under the company's main assets. It was used for things that were not meant to be seen." Tunde's expression darkened. "I didn't authorize anything like that?" "No," she said calmly. "But people under you did." Silence followed, because that truth was familiar. Power often did not see what it created. Inside that place, Mama Akosua continued, "There are records, transactions, hidden accounts. Everything they used to frame you. Ogechi frowned. Then why hasn't anyone found it? Because it's not where people would look, she replied. And because the people who know are either silent or gone. Tunde's jaw tightened. Where is it? Mama Akosua met his eyes. In Apapa. The word alone carried weight. Apapa was not just a location. It was a maze. Ports, warehouses, trucks, workers, chaos. A place where things could disappear without questions. That area is heavily controlled, Tunde said quietly. Yes, Mama Akosua replied. By the same people looking for you. Ogechi exhaled slowly. So the proof is inside the place controlled by the people who want him dead. Yes. And you're telling us to go there. Mama Akosua's eyes didn't waver. I'm telling you that's the only way he clears his name. Silence again. Then Ogechi spoke the question that mattered most. How do we get in? Mama Akosua turned slightly and gestured toward one of the men in the compound, the one repairing the radio earlier. He stood up, wiped his hands, and walked over. This is Biko, she said. Ogechi recognized him, the boy from the market, the one who polished shoes near the roadside. You, she said softly. Biko smiled slightly. I see more than people think, he replied. Tunde studied him carefully. You know the area, he asked. I grew up there, Biko said. I know every shortcut, every back gate, every place people don't watch. Ogechi felt something shift again. These were not random people. This was a network, invisible, overlooked, but connected. And you trust him? Ogechi asked Mama Akosua. The old woman nodded. I trust those who survive without being seen. That answer was enough. Tunde leaned back slightly, his mind already working. If the records are there, I need to get them out, he said. Yes, Mama Akosua replied, but not just get them. What do you mean? You need to make sure they are seen, she said, publicly, completely. Ogechi nodded slowly. Otherwise, they will just say it's fake. Tunde looked at her. Yes, and they will come after anyone who tries to use it, she added. Yes. Silence settled, because the plan was becoming clearer and more dangerous. Ogechi crossed her arms. So we don't just need to find the proof, no, Tunde said. We need to expose it. Yes? And survive long enough to do it. Tunde looked at her. That part is not guaranteed. A faint, tired smile touched her face. It was never guaranteed. Biko stepped forward slightly. We can get you inside, he said, but not in daylight. When Tunde asked, Tonight? Ogechi's heart skipped. That fast, Biko nodded. The longer we wait, the more likely they move it. Mama Akosua added quietly. And once it's gone forever. Tunde looked at Ogechi. She saw it in his eyes. The question, the weight, the decision. She didn't hesitate. We go tonight. Tunde nodded once. Tonight. The room seemed to settle into that decision. There was no turning back now. The path had been chosen. Mama Akosua turned to the others. Prepare, she said. No one asked what that meant. They simply moved. One woman brought cloth and cleaned Tunde's wound again more carefully this time. Another brought food, proper food, more than Ogechi had seen in days. Eat, she said. Ogechi hesitated, then sat and ate, slowly at first, then faster, because hunger did not wait for dignity. Tunde ate too, though more carefully. His strength needed to return, fast. Time was no longer something they could stretch. As the hours passed, the plan took shape. Simple, but risky. They would move through the smaller roads, avoid main checkpoints, enter through a side access known only to workers, find the storage, retrieve the records, and get out. Before anyone realized, if anything goes wrong, Biko said we scatter. Ogechi frowned. And then what? Then you survive, he replied. That answer stayed with her, because it was real, not hopeful, not comforting, just real. As evening approached, the sky darkened slowly. The compound grew quieter. The energy shifted. Everyone knew what was coming. Tunde stood again, stronger now, not fully healed, but ready. Ogechi adjusted her scarf, her hands steady, her eyes focused. She was no longer just reacting, she was moving with purpose. Mama Akosua stepped closer. "You understand what you are doing?" she asked. Ogechi nodded. "Yes." "And you still choose it?" Pause. Then yes. The old woman looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Good." She turned to Tunde. "This is your last chance," she said. "If you fail, there is no second attempt." Tunde met her gaze. "I won't fail." Mama Akosua didn't smile. She simply stepped back. The sun disappeared fully. Night took over, and with it, the moment arrived. Ogechi looked at Tunde. Tunde looked at her. No more words were needed. They stepped forward, together, into the dark, into the danger, into the truth, waiting to be uncovered. Night did not hide Lagos. It revealed it. Under the dim glow of scattered streetlights and flickering generators, the city changed shape. Shadows stretched longer, voices dropped lower, movements became quicker, quieter, more deliberate. And somewhere, inside that restless darkness, Ogechi and Tunde moved with a purpose that could not fail. Biko led the way. He did not rush, he did not hesitate. He moved like someone who had walked these streets 1,000 times because he had. "Stay close," he whispered. Ogechi nodded. Tunde followed beside her, his steps careful, controlled, though every movement still cost him pain. They passed through narrow alleys, through broken fences, through spaces too small for cars, too forgotten for attention. Every turn avoided the obvious. Every step rejected the direct path. Because direct paths were for people who were not being hunted. As they moved closer to Apapa, the air changed, heavier, filled with the scent of oil metal and sea salt. The distant sound of containers being moved echoed through the night. Trucks groaned under heavy loads. Workers shouted instructions. The port never truly slept. "That's our cover," Biko said softly. "Too much noise, too much movement. Nobody notices anything." Ogechi looked ahead. Tall fences, dim lights, security posts. This wasn't just dangerous. This was controlled. "You're sure about this?" she asked. "No," Biko replied honestly. "But it's the only way." That was enough. They crouched behind a stack of old crates. Biko pointed ahead. "There's a side gate," he said. "Not used often. But sometimes workers leave it unlocked." Sometimes, Ogechi repeated. Biko glanced at her. "Tonight? We hope it's one of those times." Tunde stepped forward slightly. If it's locked, Biko didn't answer, because the answer was obvious. Then they would be exposed. They moved, slowly, carefully. Each step measured, each breath controlled. The closer they got, the louder the world seemed, every sound amplified by the risk they carried. Finally, they reached the gate. Biko reached out, pushed gently. For one long second, nothing happened. Then a faint creak. The gate moved, unlocked. Ogechi exhaled softly. "Go," Biko whispered. They slipped inside, and immediately everything changed. The space beyond the gate was darker, quieter, more controlled. Rows of containers stretched into the distance. Shadows moved where light couldn't reach. This was not chaos. This was organized silence. "Stay low," Biko said. They moved between the containers, hidden, invisible, but not safe. Every few seconds, headlights from passing trucks swept across the ground, forcing them to freeze, to press against metal walls, to become part of the shadows. Ogechi's heart pounded, not from fear alone, but from the weight of what they were about to do. "We're close," Biko said. He stopped beside a smaller structure, a building that didn't belong to the visible operations. Plain, unmarked, unimportant to anyone who didn't know. This is it. Tunde stepped forward. His eyes scanned the door. This is where they hid it. Yes. Ogechi looked around. No guards, no obvious security. "That's strange," she said. "It's meant to look like nothing." Biko replied. Tunde reached for the handle. Locked. Of course. He exhaled slowly. "Step back," he said. Ogechi and Biko moved aside. Tunde looked around quickly. then picked up a loose metal rod from the ground. "You can do that?" Ogechi asked. He gave a faint, humorless smile. "I've learned a lot in the last 2 days." He positioned the rod carefully, applied pressure. Once, twice, then a sharp crack. The lock gave. The sound echoed. Too loud. All three of them froze, listening, waiting. No footsteps, no alarms, nothing. Inside, Tunda whispered. They moved quickly. The door closed behind them. Darkness. Then Biko found a switch. Light flickered on, dim but enough. And what they saw changed everything. Rows of boxes, files, hard drives, documents stacked without order, but not without purpose. Ogechi stepped forward slowly. "This is all." "Hidden records." "Yes," Tundi said quietly. His voice had changed. This was no longer just survival. This was truth. He moved quickly now, opening boxes, scanning files, checking labels. His hands moved faster than his injury allowed, but he didn't stop. "Here," he said suddenly. Ogechi stepped closer. He held up a file. Inside, bank records, transfers, names, amounts, numbers that didn't make sense for a legal operation. "Shell accounts," Tunde said. "Offshore links, false reporting." He flipped another page. "And this," his voice tightened, "this proves everything." Ogechi felt her chest tighten. "This can clear you." "Yes, completely." Tunda looked at her. "Yes." Silence. Then we take it," she said. "No," Tunda replied immediately. Ogechi frowned. "What we take everything," he corrected. Biko stepped forward. "That's too much. If we leave anything," Tunde said, "they will destroy it or twist it." He looked at Ogechi. This has to be undeniable. She understood. This wasn't just about truth. It was about making sure the truth could not be buried again. "Then we move fast," she said. They worked together. Files, drives, anything that mattered, everything that proved the lie. Time passed, too quickly, too slowly. Then a sound outside, engines. Closer than before. Biko froze. "They're here." Ogechi's heart dropped. Tundi looked at the door. "They found us. No more time. No more delay." Ogechi grabbed the last stack of files. "Go." They moved. Fast. The door opened. Night air hit them again, but this time they weren't alone. Headlights turned. Voices shouted. There, everything exploded into motion. Tunda grabbed Ogechi's arm. "Run!" They ran. Through containers, through shadows, through danger. Behind them footsteps, engines, shouts. The hunt had caught up, but this time they weren't running empty. They were carrying the truth, and now the entire city was about to see it. They ran with truth in their hands and death at their backs. The night air tore through Ogechi's lungs as she sprinted between towering containers, her grip tightening around the stack of files pressed against her chest. Beside her, Tunde forced his body forward through pain that should have stopped him hours ago. But pain had no authority tonight, only survival. Behind them, engines roared. Headlights cut violently through the darkness, sweeping across metal walls and narrow paths. Voices shouted commands. "Stop them! Don't let them get out! They have the files!" Ogechi's heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear her own thoughts. "They know," she gasped. "Of course they do." Tundi replied, his voice strained but steady. "We just exposed everything." Biko ran ahead, turning sharply into a narrow passage between stacked containers. "This way," he shouted. They followed without hesitation, left, right. Through gaps barely wide enough to pass. The maze worked both ways. It hid them, but it could trap them too. A beam of light suddenly cut across their path. Ogechi froze. A man stepped into view. Gun raised. Stop time slowed. Everything held in that 1 second. Then, a metal crash echoed from the opposite direction. Another group of workers shouted. Confusion broke the moment. Now Biko yelled. They moved again, fast, desperate, alive. They burst out of the container zone and into a wider loading area. Trucks idled nearby. Workers shouted over noise, unaware of the war unfolding just meters away. "Blend in," Ogechi said instinctively. Tunde nodded. They slowed slightly, forced their movements to look natural, controlled, normal. Biko split off briefly, kicking over a stack of crates behind them. The crash drew attention. Shouts followed, not at them, elsewhere. A distraction. Ogechi glanced at him. "You planned that Biko didn't look back." "I grew up here," he said. They reached the outer fence, the same side gate, still open, still their only chance. They slipped through, and just like that, they were back in the city. But the danger didn't disappear. It followed, because now they weren't just running. They were carrying something people would kill for. Ogechi didn't slow. "Where do we go?" she asked. Tunde's mind moved fast now. Not as a hunted man, but as a strategist. "A place where they can't bury it," he said. "Where? A media house." Ogechi frowned. "They control most of them." "Not all," he replied. He stopped briefly, catching his breath. "There's one independent, Nandi Okafor." Ogechi recognized the name. "A journalist?" "Yes," Tunde said. "She's been digging into corruption for years. They tried to silence her before. She didn't stop." Ogechi nodded. "Then we go to her?" They moved again. This time through open streets. No more hiding, no more shadows. Only speed, only purpose. Behind them, the city roared like it always did. But now, it felt like it was watching. By the time they reached the media building, dawn had begun to rise. The sky softened. The world prepared for a new day. And inside that fragile moment between night and morning, everything would change. They reached the gate. Security stepped forward immediately. "Stop. Where are you going?" Tunde stepped forward. "I need to see Nandi Okafor. Now." The guard hesitated. "You need an appointment." "Tell her Tunde Adeyemi is here," he said firmly. Silence. Recognition flickered. The guard stepped back, spoke quickly into a radio. Seconds passed. Then the gate opened. They were rushed inside, upstairs, into a room filled with screens, papers, cameras, urgency. And there Nandi Okafor. Sharp eyes, focused presence. A woman who had seen too much to be surprised easily. But even she paused when she saw them. "Tunde Adeyemi," she said slowly. "I thought you were a fugitive." "I was framed," he replied. She looked at Ogechi, then at the files. "Show me." No hesitation, no delay. They placed everything on the table, documents spread, drives connected, data open. As Nandi read, her expression changed. From curiosity to shock to something sharper. "Truth. This," she whispered, "this is everything." Tunde nodded. "It's real." Nandi looked up. "They will try to stop this." "They already are," Ogechi said. Nandi didn't hesitate. "Then we don't wait." She turned. "Prepare broadcast. Now." The room exploded into motion. Cameras set. Screens lit. Phones rang. Within minutes, the story went live. Across screens, across networks, across the city, across the country. Names exposed, accounts revealed, evidence undeniable. Femi Adeyemi, Nana Yeboah, everything, public, unstoppable. Outside, the reaction was immediate. Phones buzzed, people stopped, watched, talked. The truth spread faster than lies ever could. And for the first time, the hunters were exposed. Hours later, police moved, arrests made, offices sealed, accounts frozen. The power that had hunted Tunde collapsed under the weight of truth. Inside the studio, silence settled. Not empty, but full. Ogechi stood still, watching it all unfold, trying to understand what had just happened. Tunde stepped beside her. "It's over," he said. She looked at him. "No," she replied softly. "It's just beginning." He nodded, because she was right. A few days later, the city had changed, not completely, but enough. Tunde was no longer a fugitive. He was a survivor, a man who had seen the truth beneath his own empire. But more importantly, he was no longer blind. He stood before a press conference, not alone. Ogechi stood beside him, Not behind, not hidden, beside him. They asked me how I survived, Tunde said into the microphones. They asked how I escaped. He paused, then looked at her. I didn't escape alone. Cameras turned, focus shifted. This woman, he continued, had nothing, no power, no protection, no reason to help me. Ogechi remained still, but she did. Silence. Then she risked everything for someone she didn't know. He stepped back slightly. And today, I stand here because of her. The room erupted. Questions, voices, attention. But Ogechi didn't move. Because she didn't do it for this. She didn't do it for recognition. She did it because she couldn't look away. Later, Tunde found her alone. You can have anything, he said. Ogechi looked at him. Anything? Yes. She shook her head slowly. I don't want anything. That's not true. She thought for a moment, then said, I want fairness. Tunde listened. For people like me, she continued. For the market. For workers. For people nobody sees. Tunde nodded slowly. Then that's what we build. And for the first time, it didn't sound like a promise. It sounded like a beginning. In life, courage rarely looks like strength. Sometimes it looks like a tired girl with nothing left, choosing to help anyway. Ogechi didn't save a CEO. She saved a life. And in doing so, she reminded the world of something powerful. Kindness is not weakness. It is the strongest force we have. Because when everything else fails, money, power, influence, humanity remains. If this story touched your heart, tell us in the comments. Where are you watching from and what time is it right now? And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because stories like this remind us who we can become.